there, my name is Dr. Kimberly Ernest, and we are here with the How to Be Happy Hour, specifically to discuss the ways in which depictions of romantic relationships are often displayed as these light, fuzzy, beautiful romantic depictions, and yet, unfortunately, they're actually displaying a level of toxicity that's likely unhelpful or unbeneficial to the viewer. And so I'm here today with several guests for us to talk through the high highs and low lows associated with romantic influence in media and pop culture.
I'm Eden Yonner. I was in another episode. I work in Chambersburg as a forensic therapist, so I'm back.
I'm Dr. Christine Zahorchak. I'm a clinical psychologist, and I work out of our Locust Lane outpatient office.
And I'm Tiffany Ramos. I'm a family-based therapist here in Lebanon.
I'm Kendall Jones. I write and manage all of our grant-funded programs at PA Counseling.
All right. So interestingly, you all volunteered to come and talk about, except for Eden, everybody else volunteered to be here today to discuss what it is that, as consumers of romance and television and media, what kind of messages are being conveyed or displayed through common different themes that we're seeing? And I have a couple of different facts to start us off, just to give folks a place to begin. So fact number one that I thought was really interesting is that women are one of the primary viewers of dating reality television shows. Up to about 70% of their entire viewership is women. And that's shows like Love Island, The Bachelor. And this particular study goes on to cite that women actually find reality television shows not only entertaining, but relatable. That they appreciate the escapism associated with some of these more romance-based shows. And that women like sort of the fandom and community that surrounds these shows, while also feeling as though it displays aspects that they experience in their actual real lives. So the escapism piece totally tracks for me. I love bad reality television. I always have. It's always been a point of escapism for me. I've never looked at it and been like, I want a relationship like that, however. So if we play this tape the whole way through, what does it mean for a woman to sit down and binge The Bachelor or something similar?
Can I ask a question before we delve deeper into that?
Yeah.
As someone who's not, like, I know and I've seen reality TV or these dating shows and that kind of thing, The Bachelor. But as someone who doesn't regularly consume it, I guess what is the draw for you guys if you do or have? Like what
For
what do you
me,
want?
it sounds so weird. I don't have enough toxicity in my life. Like,
Enough drama.
Enough drama, and I keep it that way on purpose. You know, being a therapist, I've changed for 10 years now. I've revamped my life to not include toxicity as much as you possibly can. But for me, I'm like, I want to just dive in and just sit there and gorge out on someone's bad relationship. I'll be honest. Like, I don't know, but it drives you in. It keeps you lured in. But that's what it is for me. I'm like, I don't know. I need a little bit something extra in my life.
You just gave me like an aha moment.
Right.
Yeah, because I only started watching bad reality television like I in grad school specifically. Yeah. And that's when I stopped reading like books that were hard and like all the other things, right? Because I was doing all the grad school stuff. And that's when I fell in love with like young adult literature and bad reality television. Yep. And it's the escapism and the mindlessness of it, the fact that I can turn it on, clean my house where I catch like clips and bits and pieces of it, but I don't need to sit down and watch the whole narrative. And also, interestingly, I started watching bad reality television when I started dating my husband, who is the only non-toxic relationship I've ever had. So that's really curious. And maybe it's like as my life drama went down, I was like, oh, yeah, like Flava of Love, let's do this.
I just saw
like
on that the other day. That's so funny.
So good. So good. Flava Flav, do it again.
No, I just don't know how people are attracted to him. But, I mean,
They're not.
It's for the money.
You can't be.
It's
You
disgusting
physically
to me.
cannot
I'm
be.
like, what are people thinking?
The money.
These girls. Yeah.
So that's my
Yeah.
reason. I don't know.
I just love to hate them. I don't know. I started watching them when I was on maternity leave, I think. And they were so bad I couldn't stop. And I mean, I still
Makes
don't
sense.
stop. I'm watching ones that aren't even in English now. But I hate all of them on the show, and I love it.
A train wreck you can't look away from.
It's like a dumpster fire that you started.
No, I relate to that too. I get that.
See, my answer to that is I don't. I think and so I don't know what that says about the level of drama in my life that I don't want. I'll leave that open. But yeah, no, I don't watch reality shows. I don't like them. They turn me. I don't like, as far as like hating people, and that's just how I am with anything where it's like, yeah, that I typically don't. So I'd be lying if I said I didn't, like 90 Day Fiance, I was like, what, like a particular train wreck might be like, oh yeah, no, it's this couple, and things like that, and I'll be like, oh, what terrible thing is happening, but it's not healthy it's not, for me personally, I feel like I have to take a shower afterwards, so I don't actually find them appealing. I like scripted shows better. I like fiction better. I think fiction tells the truth more than reality shows. So I'll leave that.
Well, and I think I asked kind of similarly to Nicole?
Kendall.
Kendall. I don't know
That's
where I
okay.
got that name
It's
from.
all right. I can be Nicole if you want.
So when Kendall said that it's like a fire that you start, and so you have to kind of see it through. I feel like in the past when I have seen reality TV or I have watched little pieces of this stuff, it's been for that kind of reason. It's so bad that I'm somewhat intrigued, right? And so I think when I'm normally seeking out media or something to watch, I want to be able to relate to the characters and develop sort of like an emotional attachment to their journey in whatever way. And I don't know that I've ever been able to do that in those. I feel like it's unrelatable. And I think that maybe is what has driven me away. So the fact that these people find it relatable is interesting.
Correct.
I think it's interesting because I'm not into anything else in the romance genre.
And I am.
See, I don't watch any scripted romance
Yeah, and
by
I
any
read-
stretch of the imagination.
And I read romance fiction. Obviously, it has to be specific, because there's some that's too toxic, not healthy, not good, or like, no, that's not realistic, or I hate this couple, and I'm not rooting for the, things like that. But I do.
Like anything by Colleen Hoover,
Oh, actually, no, I've not gotten to her. Yeah, no. But anyway,
lots of toxic relationship dynamics.
and
love
that's why
Colleen
probably why I've never
and
I
there we
love
go.
Colleen.
probably why I've never heard of her, because I'll get 50 pages in and I'll be like, I don't like these people and I'm not rooting for them, and I put it down.
Colleen Hoover was a social worker before she became an author.
Ooh, that says a lot.
I feel like I could go either
So
way.
there it is.
Right?
There it is.
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah. So no, that's interesting because I will read fiction, but again, as I feel about the actual reality stuff, it's hard to root for them. Yeah.
I had a coworker the other day compare women's obsession with romance fiction and like romance-based reality television and romance-based like movies and such. And when I think about that, like I don't even know what recent rom-com or what I'm not up to date with that. So my mind goes to like The Notebook, Titanic, like those, neither of which I've
All
seen,
Disney fairy
truthfully.
tales.
Yeah.
I don't think the Titanic is a rom-com.
Well,
It is a romance drama.
Especially like
Not the
now.
call.
yeah.
I don't think
well,
it's supposed
I mean,
to be
this was
romantic
before
or
the
funny.
submarine. There was like a.
It is a romance
the
story,
I don't
though.
think it
Yeah.
was even
Everyone
before that, but
loved it as like
especially now.
a romantic.
It is a romantic
tale.
movie. It is.
Romantic, maybe.
Yeah.
How many
Comedy
people?
part.
I challenge you. How many people have recreated that one scene on the
Oh,
front
yeah.
of the boat?
Everybody
the-
that's ever been on a
I'm
boat.
flying.
Everyone. I'm
Yeah.
flying, Jack. Everyone's done it.
The song that's redone on a recorder.
On.
Oh
My
yes.
heart will go
Celine
on.
Dion.
Yes.
And
come
the
on.
door scene in the
So-
ocean. Yeah.
I'll never let go.
There was room on that door.
I know. I just saw a clip of
Mythbusters
that.
proved it too.
There
It was
was room on
ruined.
that door.
Yeah.
But
Tell
it-
James Cameron.
So what? But I had a coworker compare these things to pornography for men, And having the same level of negative impact in terms of realistic relationship expectations. And there is so one study from Psychology Today suggests that these portrayals often depict idealized and exaggerated romantic scenarios that do not align with real life relationships. That this, in the individuals that they studied, that this can create dissatisfaction, disappointment, and disappointment when real life relationships fail to meet those unrealistic standards.
All right, I see it now.
yeah.
Pornography's not the first one I would have picked. I would have picked like action movie, like the Transformers movie, you know, with Megan Fox, with the and the
Yeah.
and just
The
you
what
know
now?
the and then the as far as unrealistic
that's what you
sort
said.
of relationships, because it's not only the sexual part. Yes, pornography absolutely unrealistic and unhealthy standards, but think about it. You've got not that you know. He's unattractive now. I can't remember the name of the actor, Shia LaBeouf. Not that he's bad looking, but he got Megan Fox. Like he got, and again in the first Transformers, she's like a car mechanic and she's sexy and she's this and she can take care of herself with this and she's like, yes, normal looking Shia LaBeouf, I love you. To me, that's actually a better comparison
Likeness
for
or
what's
comparison.
unhealthy, like as far as like what's for heterosexual women and then what's for heterosexual men. I feel like that's more akin, but I see the pornography. I do.
I see. Did you guys ever watch 365 Days? Do you guys know what I'm talking about? I've never heard of this. It's like a 3-movie series, but a client is obsessed with it. And it's about basically how a mobster like steals or gets infatuated with a woman that he has in his he sees in his dreams, and she has 1 year to fall in love with him, and she lives under his like mansion and all his like money, everything, and a client is obsessed with it, like this mom.
Like she's
And-
kidnapped.
She's like kidnapped, but like she's not getting hurt.
She's kidnapped.
But yeah, it's strange.
So like
Nice kidnapping.
Nice kid.
Yeah,
the
the
Beauty and the
she gets
Beast all
everything.
over again.
Kind of like Beauty and the Beast.
So it's
but
got
he's
some Beauty
definitely
and the Beast vibes, which is toxic.
Oh yeah, but
And
he's
that was
not
my
a
favorite.
beast. Like
She had a really nice
yeah.
library.
well, and that's the thing that it's enticing
I
because
wouldn't
she has
hate it.
everything. She has everything done for her. There's a maid. That she's literally her only goal is to be beautiful, like and keep herself good. And she has sexual desires, and it shows in like her past relationship before she gets kidnapped. And then he's like a mobster that has all these sexual fantasies as well. So then they come together, and I feel like it's like soft porn. I feel like I'm not sure.
Spoiler alert: does she fall in love with him by
She
the end?
does.
Yeah,
She does. But the third movie, because my client got me to watch this. So I binged on it for like a whole weekend, and I was like, I cannot believe I'm watching this. I can't. But then I could see though for this mom, she escapes into this world
It's a
because
fantasy.
she's not getting that properly in her relationship, and she does escape. And I feel like, I don't know, men who want to watch porn, or maybe I don't know, are escaping. I don't know, but I just feel like I could get that kind of connection just because movies like that, where then you see like all of these scenes where they're like roughing each other up and then so seductive and they suck you in, and I could see that how that could happen in a way. So, but yeah, I don't know if I recommend the movie, but the storyline is very unique. But I've just had a lot of families say like they escape, like the moms escape into this world, and I feel like that's basically just like porn. I don't know.
Well, so kind of moving back to the idea of Transformers, and I apologize, my Transformers knowledge and of the storyline and so forth. But anyway, these movies where there's this, I don't know, male, masculine guy who saves the day, the earth, whatever, from some sort of disaster, and on the way he falls in love with this very attractive woman who, in the end, you know, ends up with him or he ends up with them, right? I feel like that idea is something that, in talking to the hundreds of male clients that I've talked to, is something that I feel like if we're talking about unrealistic standards of love or what relationships could look like, I feel like that has been very influential, because something I've seen, like this theme that keeps coming up, is this idea that a lot of guys feel like they need to be like the hero, like to save someone. And often what that looks like is providing, right? This person will love me, they will want me if I can provide them with, you know, stable income, you know, if I have all these things, if I'm established, right, then I will be loved. And it's not because of necessarily who I am that someone will love me, it's because of what I can provide them. And so I see that a lot, this idea of being a hero.
I literally had someone say it was the wife I was meeting with, but she said that her husband said, "I would take a bullet for you. I would walk over glass. I'd crawl over glass for you, but like I'm not gonna wash a dish. You want me to like? Ew, you want me to clean?" And it was so clarifying to me what her relationship was. And we both kind of like just sort of went like that, but that he had this idea like what you're saying about this guy who's like, oh my god, like again, so heroic, so this and that. But he completely failed on the day-to-day relationship. The stuff that actually makes a relationship work and healthy was just completely devoid. He just completely.
Well, in the context in which you're required to crawl over glass happens far more infrequently than the context in which you need to wash a glass.
Yes.
Bingo!
Like these two
Yeah,
things.
yeah.
This is apples and potatoes.
And yet
potatoes.
the glass
It's not
washing,
the same.
the glass washing is so much more sexy.
Yeah.
Hey, just saying, guys.
way.
I'm just letting you know.
This is where I go back
No.
to Disney has lied to us. I even when I first volunteered to be on this podcast, I didn't even think about the reality TV part. I thought about how
I have
Disney
Disney on here, too.
has
Yeah.
just
Nice.
completely lied from the beginning. I even was engrossed in that as a kid, and I'm like, I can't wait. Like the best day of my life is going to be my wedding. No, that was way too much money, so much stress. It was a great day.
Sure.
I'd rather be a
build-up.
participant and rather than doing it, like making it for everyone. But my whole life, I'm like, I just can't wait. And that was like the highlight of my life. And and I just feel like Disney really ruined it for me. Like I just feel like they lied and they had me thinking a man needed to provide things like that. And I now that I'm older, I feel Disney
let's look at the
lied.
Disney narrative, because I think we're right in a similar ballpark in terms of age or ish. You're probably a little bit younger than I am. But when I think about the Disney movies that were coming up while I was, we have The Little Mermaid, where you have to give up your voice and your lower half for a dude.
And your family in
And
the
your family.
city, like,
you never get to see your dad again.
Yep.
I remember like sitting there, like, I'll never see
I know.
my dad. I'm gonna get married. Now I don't know. I'd mind it, but it's funny because y'all know my dad. Anyway, then we have Beauty and the Beast, like Stockholm Syndrome to the max.
Exactly.
We have, what were the other ones when we were growing?
Cinderella.
Cinderella.
Yes.
Sleeping Beauty.
Sleeping Beauty, kiss
Rapunzel.
people while they're asleep.
Yeah.
I mean, like, what kind of messaging? Like, it's a wonder that
Yeah.
any of us are capable of having healthy
I
adult
know.
romantic
I'm
relationships.
telling- that's the first thing that came to my mind with this topic. I was like,
Disney's done
Disney.
better. Like Moana, she's
Yes,
badass.
it's getting better. It is.
Raya,
Yeah.
I'm here for her.
Yeah.
Loving Encanto. We know how I feel about Encanto.
right.
So I mean, they've certainly changed their branding.
Yeah.
But there was a season where it was like the princess model
Yeah.
that was like that was the ideal, and there was no space to deviate.
Yeah.
You had taken us one direction, and then Eden, you had mentioned something which I think actually ties into one of the other negative impacts that I have here. The description you had described, or what you were talking about, brought me to that like John Wayne masculinity. And I find myself wondering if there's not a bit of a yin and a yang here as we talk to the portrayals of women within these like reality television shows or scripted romantic depictions. There's a certain body type, there's a certain look, there's a certain, for the most part, personality pattern. I mean, there's some flexibility there.
Well, and I think there's certain tropes that you'll
Yes.
have. You'll have like
Yeah.
the manic pixie dream girl who's so bubbly and just vivacious and all this, and then you'll have the brooding, sexy vixen. So I think there's certain
Yeah.
tropes. Yeah.
But they each fit, there's
certain
categorical,
narrative.
there's a certain narrative.
Yeah.
And I would argue that men have the same burden
Agreed.
in that. Like, I'm thinking about, like, John Wayne or, sticking in the John category, John McClane from Die Hard. Like,
John Wick.
yeah, John Wick. They're all named John. And according to this particular study by nationaleatingdisorders.org, they identify reality television as being a predominant contributor to those with unhealthy body image, disordered eating, and unhealthy health behaviors. And that participants in their study suggested that their consumption of reality television specifically promoted a very narrow and unrealistic beauty standard for them to follow. And I would suspect in watching these shows, the men fall into the same definitely steroid use has got, like, we're not testing these gentlemen. and like
Flavor
2%
Flav.
body fat.
Yeah.
Or Flava Flav. I mean, there is Flava Flav.
No, I've definitely seen that. And so, like, as you were talking about it, like the Terminator and Rambo and all of these other, like, movies where you have these huge jacked guys go on this, again, this mission to do something, save something, whatever. Yeah, that was definitely all coming through my mind. So I don't know that I've had so many people come and talk about, their working out and whatnot being related to that. But I've had a lot of people talk about, body or self-esteem issues related to that idea of just not feeling like they meet standards that women will find attractive, right? Now, I think there's been some resurgence. I think the dad bod
Yeah.
has definitely become like a thing.
Yep.
And I think that there's some acceptance of the idea that it's not necessarily, women don't always want some guy with a six-pack and like huge pecs who can, I don't know, lift a car. It's not.
They want a guy who can wash a dish, Eden.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the fucking
Exactly.
reality of
Yeah.
it.
Well, and I think, again, to the point, in reality, a guy's not likely to have all of those things. It takes a lot of work to get
Yes,
some
it
of those. I mean, because, again, some of these actors who... And they'll talk about it too. I've definitely seen things. The one guy, Rob from It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, he'll talk
Yes.
about that. Like, he got super jacked for a season of that show, and he said he had to hire like this super trainer guy, and he'll say it's not super realistic for
He
your
also
average
talked
guy.
about when he had to get fat for
Yeah.
the season before that and how hard that was.
But also being happier because he could eat whatever he wanted, and the
Drink ice
people
cream
around
instead
him,
of anything else.
yeah, the people around him being happier too because he wasn't consistently having to watch himself and do everything. And so, yeah, I think that there is some truth to the idea that it creates these unrealistic standards that leave people feeling worse about themselves.
I have to make a pun. You talked about huge jacked men. Hugh Jack, who played Wolverine, he talked about when he had his shirtless Wolverine scenes, he would have to stop drinking water 2 days before the shot because that's how you get the six-pack abs. If you're properly hydrated, then you're not as defined. You're not as
So
defined.
unhealthy.
It's so unhealthy. It's so unrealistic. So just putting that out there as well.
I remember Brad Pitt telling a similar story for his
Yeah.
Fight Club. What was it? Fight Club, and then right after that, he was like had the Cockney accent, the one with the diamond heist. I can't remember, but both of them. The whole thing is he's like lanky and cut, and he said I wouldn't eat or drink for 48 hours before filming because otherwise
that.
you have. Like your body retains water when it needs to, and so
And then people try to attain this.
and then people
the
don't
problem.
with regularity.
Exactly.
Like not even for
Exactly.
a one-time photo shoot.
Yeah.
This is like I want to live my life that
Yeah.
way.
I mean, Kim Kardashian recently did that too, like where she had to fit into Marilyn Monroe's dress or something, and she went
right.
all public about how she was like, "Give me like 2 weeks and I'll lose 20 pounds," and she documented it. Everyone and people were like raving about it, and I'm just thinking of the toxicity on that. Like, it's so disgusting what you have to go through to do that. And she has millions of followers, so everyone's seeing this, and it's just so unrealistic and so unhealthy.
Yeah.
Oh.
And yet we can't look away.
I can't look away.
We can't look away.
So then, yeah, that's the issue.
That's the and my fear where I struggle is how will it impact my kids, right? Because as a parent, and I think you're the only other parent. Christine, you don't have kids,
Correct,
right?
no.
No, I didn't think
I
so.
will.
You're about to
currently
be.
making one.
Baby on board. This is our
Yeah.
first podcast of 6 now.
Hey,
We're usually a pod of 5. So
And she's kicking, so she's
she's
here.
here.
She's
She's
here.
participating. But for me, and to know that you're expecting a little girl, and then obviously you've got a little
Oh,
girl
there's
who I care
worries,
about
yeah.
very much. I really worry about these ongoing messages, and I think little boys get the same. I mean, my 7-year-old, he's like, I'm swole. Like, look at my muscles. Look how big my arms are. And it's like, first of all, your arms are smaller than my wrist, but also, second of all, you're 7, and like. You should be healthy and playing but like he loves sports and athletes and The Rock.
Right.
And I mean I don't know it for sure, but I'm pretty certain no matter how big he gets, he won't resemble The Rock in physical likeness. So how do we moderate these expectations for our kids and adolescents who are consuming the same media, but maybe not with the same fully developed prefrontal cortex that the rest of us are doing it with?
I mean, I'm in the family-based world, so I'm all about family is like the number one contributor to all this. And being involved in so many families, it starts with your family. For instance, I even had a co-therapist before where she grew up and she would always see her mom just standing on the scale, cutting her carbs, counting calories. And so she grew up in that kind of environment where it was kind of just ingrained in her. It's not even that she even watched social media like that. Watched shows or anything like that. It's just literally just watching her mom and her behaviors. And then I'm on the opposite end where my mom was overweight after she had us, and so she just wasn't cutting calories or what. We didn't even have a scale in our house. And I mean, I also grew up very sheltered, so a lot of channels like MTV and all that were blocked because I grew up very religious and Christian. So anything that cursed, any channel that had a curse word, my dad blocked. So I could not even see those things. So I'm even trying to think of, having a baby girl, how to kind of take some ties from my childhood, but also not be that sheltered that then my child goes to school and has no idea what they're even like that's because that's how I felt and stuff. But I did grow up with a mom who didn't do any of that. It's not like she didn't care about her weight. It's just she thought there was more to life than that. And so I just grew up very confident in my body. I also was an athlete for many years. So I just naturally was slim thick is what you would call it. And I don't know, I grew up very body confident. And I think it really was rooted in my parents and not showing me that a scale was you went by a scale and that's the numbers on that scale. They always use words like you're healthy and strong, never like my sister did grow up overweight, and they weren't saying words like you're overweight, or they just said, hey, let's have a healthier meal, or I don't know, they used more positive words rather than let's cut that out or things like that. Or my dad would say like, let's go play some basketball, and that was like our love language growing up, playing sports together. So I don't know, more positive words. But I also, like I said, I didn't watch TV like that. So I didn't have that kind of influence with an underdeveloped brain watching that. So, yeah.
This may be me being naive, but I think it's a little, it's still rough, but a little easier for kids now than when I grew up. You talked about like, your 7-year-old recognizing things like, I think I was probably around that age when I realized like, oh no, I'm fat. Like, oh no, I wasn't fat, but oh no, my thighs are big, or this is
The thigh
bad
gap.
about
The
me,
thigh
things
gap.
like that. Yeah, just all sorts of things, and especially just and then when I was a teenager in the 90s and early 2000s, that's when heroin chic was very in, the Kate Mosses, things like that. Everyone said that Jessica Simpson got fat, if you remember that picture with the jeans and whatnot. Like, oh my God, like that was the worst thing ever. Or like Tyra Banks in that one picture, where she's in a bathing suit. Again, everyone was like the tabloids, and I agreed with everyone at the time. Wow, she's fat. And I look at these pictures now and I was like, what are you talking about? This is fine. Like, this is nothing. So like, we never could have had Lizzo back then, like growing up. As talented and as awesome and as phenomenal as Lizzo is, I don't believe that there would have been room for her in the landscape now versus now. We did, thankfully, we do. And we do have, a lot of, body diversity that now gets celebrated. We still have a long way to go. Don't get me wrong. There's still a lot of messages out there that are very unhealthy, especially when people, now big butts are in. So people are getting like the Brazilian butt lifts and things like that, and also, getting fat injected into their butts to make them bigger. Don't get me wrong, as far as that goes. But I'm just I'm just thinking, I think it's just a smidgiest bit better now than it was back when I was a kid. That's my thoughts anyway.
I think I would be inclined to agree with you in more like popular or like common media portrayals. I think we've gotten a lot better. And I think the internet and internet algorithms and social media and some of the so I think we have greater representation in certain areas. I think we actually have greater representation everywhere. But I think it's still possible to consume only entirely unrealistic
That is
content.
easier. I agree. Yeah.
And I think we're much more connected now than we ever were before.
Yeah.
So whereas if MTV didn't have on what I wanted to watch and my parents didn't know how to block the TV, or else they probably would have. I was allowed to watch the Care Bears, so I don't know how I got away with MTV. Maybe by then they're like, "Fuck it, we give up."
Right.
What was wrong with the Care Bears?
Oh, we don't even need.
Fair
to talk
enough.
about
Okay,
it.
sorry,
Yeah.
sorry.
No, but I wasn't allowed to watch the Care Bears. They thought they were satanic. I figured that out. But I wasn't allowed to watch the Care Bears, and but if MTV wasn't on, if it wasn't TRL and it was something else, it's like, well, then I gotta watch whatever's on, or like maybe I'll turn it off and go outside or something.
Yeah.
It is different.
Whereas now it's like 24/7,
Yeah.
almost
On your
this
phone.
main line.
Yeah.
And so I think we have better representation, but we have more of it overall. So my fear is that we're canceling
Sure.
itself out.
Good point. Good point.
That makes sense.
Maybe not. Maybe I'm wrong. I hope I'm wrong.
Well, no, I don't know that it cancels out, but I think it definitely changes the landscape as
The
far as that
dynamic,
goes.
yeah.
Like so again, body diversity, body representation, yay! Everything that you just mentioned, the onslaught of media and just it's at your fingertips. Ooh, like that. That I don't envy kids these days. Definitely.
So another one of the data points that I had here for us to discuss today is surrounding the reinforcement of gender stereotypes within our media. And I think the example that you had used, that 365 or whatever, which I don't know if I'm going to watch it or not.
I don't know if you want to do that.
I did just watch, interestingly, the documentary. I think I mentioned it to you, but the new Hulu documentary on the AshleyMadison.com data leak.
Huh?
Oh, I don't know what that one is.
I couldn't recommend it more highly. It's only 3 episodes, and it's on Hulu. But it's all about like the rise and fall, essentially, of AshleyMadison.com. And for those of you who aren't familiar, AshleyMadison.com was a website, in the
2000.
2000.
Yeah, early 2000s.
2010s, yeah.
Early 2000s, specifically for individuals who are married to go onto that website to engage in illicit affairs.
Cheaters.
But they know that in coming onto the website, so it's supposed to have greater discretion, and everyone's committed to maintaining the secret. And so you can imagine how a documentary about their data breach is incredibly interesting, because then all of that data ended up on the internet, including like searchable databases, but they preyed on the stereotype. Their big message wasn't that affairs are ruining marriages. Their argument was the lack of affairs is what was leading to divorce. And so if more people would just have affairs
Instead of divorce.
they would actually be saving marriages in the long run. And it felt very predatory and very sneaky. And they would do different campaigns, media marketing campaigns, focused on like Elliot Spitzer, like don't be like Elliot, do it this way, or like whatever it was. Like they would take like big national stories and use it in like a very questionable, like almost predatory way. Manipulative, but their big stereotype was like married women are miserable. So to be less miserable, you can go have this affair, and then you take that lack of misery into your marriage, like that new
Your family
satisfaction
life.
into your marriage, and it'll like breathe life back into your
that's
marriage.
why you watch reality TV.
And that's why you
what I
watch
said
reality
from the
TV,
beginning.
Ashley Madison. Which is probably why they had a bunch of bots on their website, because a lot of women didn't fall for it, but tons of dudes did.
Tons of dudes.
Tons of dudes did. And the message that they did to engage in sort of predatory marketing towards men was essentially the old ball and chain trope, like your wife is boring and miserable, and like imagine your one night stand is now the rest of your life, and like that was their big model. And like 10,000, 20,000, 150,000. Like men just sort of flock to this website. And I think we see it now with these reinforcements of gender stereotypes, negative gender roles, this idea of 365, where your only job is to live in a basement and be pretty. And there are times where I wear so many different hats and I have a lot of different parts of my job, and it'd be cool if that was my only one, right? Like I wouldn't be mad at it for a minute until I like settled down and looked at myself, and then I think I get pretty pissed off.
And she does. She does. Because she
does.
seeks out
Okay.
another relationship.
Spoiler alert.
Yep,
She's like,
spoiler alert.
no, this isn't cool.
Exactly.
I have more value than the way I look, which I think is actually probably a nice positive twist at the end of a story that sounds a little uncomfortable.
Yeah.
The predatory marketing, it took place after the whole data.
No,
Before.
that was it. That was the model. That was the
Okay.
business
That was
model.
the whole model.
based
Okay,
on.
Like your wife won't fuck you, but she's really good at making like soccer mom snacks, so you don't want to leave her, but you want to fuck somebody hotter.
Yeah, we'll keep
kind of the
discretion.
goal.
We'll. Yeah, that's literally how they market it.
I never knew this existed. I'm going home and watching
It
this.
didn't just used
Like,
to exist.
what?
After I watched this whole thing, it still exists.
Oh.
I was going to say, so people were aware before the data was leaked that that was what it was being
That's
used
the
for.
whole
people
purpose
were
of
aware.
going on.
I kind of like the fact that they doubled down on like with this predatory marketing thing of, you know, this is going to save your marriage. I think that's crazy.
I think it worked.
It worked.
But
Yeah.
there was a huge market for it. Like they're not dumb.
No.
Yeah.
There were
Right.
people that bought into it and wanted to do it.
Because it was successful.
There was a ton,
It was
hundreds of thousands of people.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
It was
So there
very
was a market
successful.
for it.
Oh,
there was a
absolutely.
market for it. Now
For
the
cheaters.
question was how many of the women on the site were actual women, because they would upload fake profiles. So if you were a woman, you could go on for free. If you were a man,
You'd
Oh.
you'd have to pay.
Yes. Yes.
And you didn't just pay to be on it, you paid for your outreach. So the more profiles that you wished to contact, the more money you spent to
Got
get
it.
messaging privileges or credits, or what they used credits. And so again, I think right now I'm reading a book that has a really cool message in terms of traditional gender stereotypes. It's Lessons in Chemistry. I don't know if you've read. It was like New York Times bestseller. I'm in a book club that I never go to, but it's the book this month, and this month I'm going to get there. I hope, maybe. I don't know. It depends when it's scheduled, and if I feel like putting pants back on at that time. But in my head, I'm always going to go. But Lessons in Chemistry, and it's all about this. It's set in the late 50s, early 60s, surrounding a woman who wants to be a chemistry professor. And in the early part of the story, she's sexually assaulted while at college and gets kicked out between her master's and her doctorate, and sort of goes through the whole story about women in non-traditionally female careers and what that looks like. But a really cool female protagonist and positive gender messages. But we don't have as many of those, and some of the things that they're suggesting here is that these negative gender stereotypes will discourage women from pursuing careers or activities traditionally associated with men, and leads to beliefs that are self-limiting, reduce self-confidence, and feed into a sense of inequality or inferiority.
I mean, I don't know why my mind, maybe I'm just an optimist, because my mind goes to the hearing about the opposite when that happens, probably because it's happy and because it's so nice, because there are these underlying messages about, you know, just generally speaking, things that are traditionally coded female or a little or lesser than as far as things traditionally coded as male. But I remember the X-Files back in the 90s, and Dana Scully was one of the main characters, and there was a huge uptick in STEM for women about, 8 to 10 years after the X-Files started, and they called it the Scully effect, because a lot of these girls saw Agent Scully being a kick, and she was the straight person, Mulder was the one who was like, aliens. And so the fact that she was like the more serious one, it actually really it ignited something in quite a lot of young girls. And so they did go on to do that. So again, that's just a factor of course what we watch influences us. It's just a positive example of that. Sorry, I totally derailed.
No,
Give it a positive
no.
example. Yeah.
No, I like the positive
Yeah.
example. I'm trying to think of more of them, I think is where my head is going.
Yeah, because
So,
there aren't that many.
I don't believe in trying to like box up the darkness. I think that's really hard to do. I think we need to turn on a light. And so I can sit here and scream into the void all day about how some of these depictions and portrayals of romance are actually disgusting and toxic. Or I could say, like, this is a really good example. And so we should lead with that. And the fact that I'm really struggling right now either says something about me as a human or
Or both.
or both.
Yeah,
I don't know.
media.
Ada Twist Scientist. I mean, that is a fairly new book series turned television series for children with a black female protagonist that is a scientist and loves that sort of thing. And I see that influence. You see a lot of like STEM for girls and that sort of thing at the Lancaster Science Center. I take my kids there a lot, and they advertise for that specifically. So I could see like those two things overlapping, but I'm really struggling to come up with a good and healthy portrayal of romance.
The first thing that comes to mind when I think of a good and healthy romance is the TV show Firefly, which is only on for one season. Yes, but Wash and Zoe have one of the sweetest, kindest, dearest, healthiest marriages. And of course, you know, if you know what happens in the movie, cough, cough. But regardless, the show is just, they're just lovely. Like they're always, when I think of media depictions of a healthy relationship, they're the first couple that I think of, because it's not the crux of the show. It's not dependent on their drama or all this and that. They're just lovely. They're just wonderful.
So this kind of is an open-ended, like, for interpretation, but the first thing that came to my mind as we started thinking about it was the mom and dad and Malcolm in the Middle.
Oh, sure. They're quirky.
Because I think, like, growing up in the family I did, where I had 3 siblings, right, like, a lot of elements of the show felt very relatable. But I think now that I'm sitting here in hindsight, how realistic was the marriage? Was it? I don't know.
So you're saying it was a good example, or it was an unrealistic
It
example?
seems, at first glance, to me like it would be a good example.
I would think as well.
I don't know that. And I think it's another example, like you brought up this idea of, what was it? Not Twin Peaks.
X-Files?
X-Files. Where the man in the show is kind of quirky, and I mean, that's Hal, and that's Bryan Cranston's character. But I think Lois is the very serious, you know,
Don't mess with.
disciplinarian kind
Yeah.
of figure. So
That's
I can see
interesting.
it. When I think of healthy depictions, the first thing that came to my mind, and I don't know what this says, and then my mind got stuck on it, is the relationship between Carl and his wife in Up.
Oh, so sweet. Yeah, Ellie.
And
yeah.
now she's dead after the first 3 minutes of the movie, so I don't know what that means about moving forward. But it did look like they had a beautiful life together, and just this adventure that they shared with one another. And so, well, that movie made me like sob my eyes out in the first 30 seconds, and I'm like trying to furiously wipe it from underneath my 3D glasses. I do believe that was a relatively healthy portrayal of a healthy romantic relationship.
I'm noticing a theme, sorry, real quick, is just all of these, like, it happens in the first few minutes of Up, or it's part of Malcolm in the Middle, or it's part of Firefly. None of these are the crux of the show. I feel like if it's dependent, there wouldn't be a show, because it would be doing the dishes. It would be doing, you know, whatever, this or that kind of thing. So I can't help but wonder how that skews people's opinions of relationships, because if they're watching a TV show for the relationship and the drama and the angst and the this and the that, you're going to get a lot of this and unhealthy and toxic and whatever, this and that, because it's gripping, because it grabs you. All the shows about healthy relationships, I don't think that can be the focus of the show, because it'd be boring.
Yeah.
Because healthy relationships, I'm saying it, healthy relationships are boring.
They are.
There's consistency, there's stability, there's predictability. That all comes with healthy relationships. Doesn't make for good watching, though. So I think
So
that's a
true,
problem.
now I'm
Yeah.
thinking about it.
Yeah.
No, and again, I think that points back to what you guys were saying with reality TV, right? Why it's so gripping,
Yep.
why people want
It's
it.
a train wreck.
It is a train wreck, and I don't have enough of it in my life.
I feel like I need to bring this example up because it's like such a big one, right? So most people have watched The Office at some point. It's
I
a
was
lot of
actually
people love
wondering
it.
about
Yeah.
Jim and Pam.
Yeah.
Actually,
Yeah.
I've not. I've only seen like clips.
Well, and so I think
But-
this is some like
Maternity leave. That's your that's your
That's your
homework.
assignment.
as I've gotten older, right, and I've talked with different friends and stuff about this show, I think something that's come up is whether or not the relationship, because I think for a long time there was just kind of this idea that Jim and Pam's romance was very like ideal,
Goals.
right? Everything, yeah, what they had, right, the kind of joking between them and everything. But then I think as I got older again, and I was talking with people, there were people who would bring up that there were elements of the relationship that didn't seem so great. And so maybe it's not a great representation as maybe once I had, or even maybe other people think. And yeah, so I thought I'd bring that one up to see how you guys felt about it.
I've thought about it and I have an opinion, but I'm not going to speak first on this one. I don't know. What do y'all think about Jim and Pam?
I don't know them, so I can't. I have nothing. Yeah, I know. Maternity leave.
There you go.
Kim, you should go first.
Really? So the thing so here's how I feel about it. I don't think you should date at work.
Oh, sure.
I don't think you should date at work. And I
Absolutely.
feel like that's my like base level for everything. And I don't know what part of that is like my HR hat. I also want to be clear. I've never dated at work.
You
Like,
married at work.
I'm married to my
Whoa.
husband who happens to also
married
work
at
here.
work.
You just called her out.
But we were together before he worked here.
Where did you get married?
What do you mean? At Disney World? I know. In front of the castle. It's
Aw.
so toxic. It's so, toxic.
romantic.
I know it's so cute though. Thinking about it.
Oh, it's true.
I held it in the whole time we were talking about Disney princesses. but
Man.
I couldn't.
No, that's all true. But we should. I still don't think you should date at work.
I've never dated.
I think
anybody
there's
at
a
work.
lot of downsides to it. I've always stayed away from it. My fear is that it makes it weird for everyone, and it has a high possibility of going wrong. And I feel like with Jim and Pam, there were a lot of high highs and low lows before they had that happily ever after. And I'm just thinking about, like, as a supervisor in that particular program, what a nightmare that would have been. Like, what if Roy came to your office and he's like, yeah, well, Jim's talking to my wife. And, like, then you have to have a thing. And Michael Scott would have been the one to navigate it. And how would have that gone? Not good.
Would have made for great TV, though.
With Toby,
Right.
of all people.
My just comment is if my husband had bought a house without consulting me first, they would. You did what? You did what? This is not romantic. This is not cute. This is not. It's like it's like in 50 Shades of Grey, the first book / movie, when he's like, "Oh, don't worry, I sold that terrible car of yours." It's like, MF, you did what without me, and who did what, this and that. It's in the guise of it being this romantic gesture. Oh, taking care of the woman, this and that kind of thing. That's one thing that I run into with men who are like, so I feel like I just have to anticipate what she wants and what this, and I'm like, as a woman, I can say this, dude, don't. Ask her. Ask her. Ask her.
Yeah.
What does she want? But and he'll be like, but that's so boring, and that's not romantic. And again, back to my healthy relationships are boring. Like it's my mantra. Is that right? No. That way though, you'll know. Like it'll be good. But so many people love that fantasy. They love that dream, that idea, that being the hero, like what you were saying, or being the princess, and just all this stuff.
But that feeds certain like you see that trope carry on. I mean, we see it in every Christmas. Car commercials come out with like
Absolutely.
pulling into the driveway
the big
with the big bow on
bow.
top. If my husband spent $50,000 without a phone call,
Right.
I don't know. I feel like I would feel some kind of way. You put us in what kind of debt?
Yeah,
no,
yeah.
my
You did
pilot
what?
ride's just fine. Like I don't need
Bingo.
a BMW.
SNL they did a pretty great job with
Did they?
Timothy Chalamet. They made a skit where the husband buys a car and then
She's like, what were you thinking?
yeah.
Yes.
We're
See,
taking
that's
it right
realistic.
back.
That's
Yeah.
realistic.
But again,
That
it's
is
in a
true.
comedy show. It's like a joke. So No, I think exactly what you were saying, that idea of Jim buying the house and other narratives like that, they definitely reinforce that unrealistic hero provider mentality that a lot of people end up having. So, but I think, like, again, it goes back to that idea of that kind of media is super gripping, because I mean, think about how awesome it might feel to give this ginormous gift that's also this ginormous risk, and then have it pay off. I mean, that's like winning the lottery.
It's epic.
So,
That's
yeah.
It's a grand. We write songs about it and large, grandiose, just big feelings, big feelings. Makes sense why it's gripping. It's just not real.
It's not reality.
Not
no.
healthy.
But it's such a big risk.
Yeah.
And like, how many of us really know our partners that well?
But I know so many people who feel like they should. Like, well, I should know,
Yeah.
because if I really love this, if this is my soulmate, if this is the person I'm destined to be with, all these narratives, then I should know. So I'm gonna spend the $50,000, because in my heart, and my soul, and it sounds beautiful. You can hear the passion in their voice, the good-heartedness that comes from it, and then just the fall
Yeah.
and then they come to therapy and it's like, okay, let's talk through this. Let's go. Here we go.
A healthy, deep romantic connection, no matter how powerful, no matter how complete, no matter how egalitarian or open or honest, doesn't equip people with mind reading abilities.
Cheers.
No matter
Yes.
what. No matter what.
Cheers.
So you can have a really good relationship and you still need to ask what that other person needs, especially in like high risk times, or when spending $50,000 or during times of great loss or grief or need or whatever that. I mean, I can think about, I reference this a lot, but in 2020, my husband lost his dad, and then several weeks later, my brother passed away. And I remember, like, I needed to grieve this way. I actually grieved with bad reality television and way too much gin. But it was fine. I was grieving. And so I watched, what did I watch? Are You the One? I hid in my basement from my kids and my husband, and I couldn't tell you a single person that was on that show. I couldn't today. But like, I isolated and just had my moment, and then was able to function again as a human being. But I needed to go into a hole and come back out again. My husband like flew to Texas, was with his siblings, was with his mom, was like doing all these like, and my husband's a super introvert, like the most introverted introvert ever. You're laughing. Like, he doesn't like when Kendall comes over. He's like, I'll be upstairs. Like, he's the most introverted introvert of all time. Like, so the fact that in his grief he needed that, I would have never predicted that in a million years. And I love him deeply and fiercely, and I think we have a mostly healthy, well-functioning relationship. I would have never predicted that Mike Ernest needs people in a time of grief.
Yeah.
And me, who's often quite the opposite, I'm a bit more social, not tremendously so, but I have higher social needs than he's ever had. I remember him being like, well, don't you want to like go see people and go do things? And I was like, no, I don't. I'm going to pee, and then I'll be in the basement drinking gin with a lime.
Yes.
And I'll see you in 3 days. So we just had very different needs. And had we tried to predict what
Or
the other
assume.
person needed in that moment, man, we would have fucked it up. And at times we did.
It's the thrills though in the media that, like you were saying, it needs to keep. I keep going back to what you were saying. It has to keep us enticed in some way, and everything else it goes back to being boring, and you need something to watch. But I think, like, even for myself, who I will binge out on unrealistic, toxic kind of media, I also then watch like YouTube, and like what first comes to my mind is like van lifers. I don't know why, but like what I mean by that though is
Are those the people that live in a van?
They do, yeah. Okay. But like couples and free-spirited couples who just have really healthy relationships. Not all of them, but so what my point is, I also kind of counteract what I watch with like real stuff. And I don't know. Then I'm like, okay, so I'm normal. I'm good. Like but I do like.
I also watch people that live in a van.
Yeah.
I'm totally balancing it out.
So true. I've actually told my husband too. I'm like, don't you think it would be cool to like do that? He's like, absolutely not. Not at all. And I'm like, really? It's just the free spirit, like the having no plan is kind of what entices me.
No mortgage.
But
no.
yeah, exactly. And just waking up on a beach every day and a new scene every day. Maybe that's kind of playing into the boring healthy relationship thing, and that would, I don't know, but I feel like you need to also give your brain not just all the candy, it needs to also get like the salads and the good stuff too. So I don't know, I feel like there's a good balance for me personally in what I consume, so that it's not all unrealistic garbage. But also too, the unrealistic garbage in a way keeps me connected to my clients, because my clients also watch this stuff on a daily basis. And even I tell them too, I'm like, I can get really engrossed in that stuff and it's just not good. But I don't know, then I have something to relate on, and I'm like, did you see the new episode? Like, and it can start our combo, and then we can go into family therapy stuff. But.
It's interesting you talk about your clients watching it, because a different study in the Journal of Youth and Adolescence identified depression, anxiety, and body dissatisfaction as three of the primary
Here we go.
impacts of both romance novels and any media with negative gender stereotypes, or reality television, dating reality television,
So much sense. Yeah.
associated with an increase in depression, anxiety, and body dissatisfaction. So do we add this to like our mental health intake? Do we say like so what are you streaming
consuming?
right now?
Right.
What was the last thing you binged on a Saturday night? And does that inform our practice?
And how did you feel afterwards? How did it work for you? Yeah.
I see that too about, I saw something online too about people who binge on crime shows. There's some scientific, some studies with the brain on that too. And if you can close the door and just binge on crime stuff, I'm trying to think of what they said, but it's just not healthy. It's not healthy is my point in that. So there's a lot of statistics that go to that. I don't know what it causes in you, but for you to escape and just go see people die constantly, it says something about you. It does. Well, I wish I would have remembered.
Yeah, I think it says something. It says something about you that you're drawn to those shows, and then I think it also has an impact on you, like what Kim's saying with these stats. That it also impacts as far as how do I look or what am I supposed to be. This was back in the 2000s. They had the reality show the Swan, and it was these ugly women, and they got tapped to get plastic surgery and all this sorts of and just face and butt and all these things to become pretty. I say quotation marks because they looked like
that cat lady.
plasticky, right? Exactly. Aww. Just afterwards, but beautiful. And I remember I had a roommate in college who loved to watch it, and I remember afterwards, I don't even know if she realized she would do this, but after the show was over, she'd get up, she'd walk over to the full length mirror, and she'd just look at herself and just be kind of like that kind of thing. So it's I'm of the notion that guilty pleasures, everybody has a few, and that's I think that's fair, as far as that goes, but almost like how I'd compare it to alcohol use. If you overdo it on gin or other types of substances.
It wasn't a good idea, Christine. It wasn't a good idea.
Let's be clear about that.
No, don't grieve like that, listeners. It's not a good idea. I'm just saying that's what I did.
If you are
I'm not going to lie to you about it.
Good for you. Thank you. Yes. But if you are going to overdo it, there are consequences. Just like if you overdo alcohol, there's consequences. At the same time, though, if this is your end of the day, pouring yourself a beer or, this and that, turning on, junk reality show. It's not that that's the problem. It's then how does it impact your life, or what does it do to you, or what do you, or again, do you find yourself reaching for another, right. or neglecting your kids because of it, or realizing you hate yourself because of it, or time out. That's when we need to add it to the mental health eval.
Well, a healthy brain needs to make those boundaries.
Yes, 100%.
It can be hard when you get sucked in.
100%.
I think something this is making me think of, and so somewhat recently, maybe a month or two ago, I was talking with somebody about this client I had, and they were asking me about shows they watched, and they were a real big person. They were really into anime a lot, right? And so they were talking to me about like these archetypes, and so I did a ton of reading on archetypes and some of Carl Jung's work, and it was so fascinating. And I feel like now that you're talking about whether or not it should be something on an intake, I think for me, and just working with all the clients that I do, it's been something I've been more likely to ask, because, I mean, back to this idea of like the protector, the provider, some of these guys that I'm working with, they'll talk about if they're watching anime or if they're watching superhero stuff. Again, they feel very connected to this loner kind of outcast, weirdo, whatever it is, who then develops superpowers and saves the city, and they become like this respected figure who
Gets the girl.
Yeah.
girl, right? And so it maybe just reinforces again this idea, this trope that we're talking about here. And so no, I definitely I think it probably will be something I continue to consider with everybody that I work with.
What are you watching? Yeah.
Yeah.
That's totally my dissertation. By the way, my doctoral dissertation was archetypal theory of Harry Potter. So that's why
that's
just saying.
That's
so that's
cool.
my jam.
I would probably read
Yeah.
your dissertation,
Yeah.
and there aren't many that I would read. I'm
Cheers.
going to be honest,
Yeah.
but I would read that one.
Nice.
That's another thing I wasn't allowed to watch growing up.
Oh, sure, right.
That was
yes.
witchcraft. I
yeah.
just literally in the last 2 months watched Harry Potter for the first
Aw,
time.
What'd you think?
Oh, love it.
Yay.
I can't believe I'm so mad that my parents sheltered me that much. I'm like, are you kidding me?
Yeah.
Like, are you kidding?
Never seen it.
Never
haven't?
seen, no.
No.
Yeah, and you don't
was-
have to.
I was that.
J.K. Rowling is, has her own views about it anyway,
Bunch of
but that's not what
things,
this
yeah.
show's about. But anyway, yes, I don't support her anymore. But regardless, still love Harry Potter.
Yeah.
Gosh, I had a thought, and then we got derailed by J.K. Rowling.
Sorry.
Hold on. No. I'll come back to it. Okay, I've got it. So we actually, it's interesting you brought up young archetypes, because that is, I'm preparing for our gaming podcast in a couple of weeks. And that is a big theme throughout a lot of video games and like live action, like role-playing games and some of those different things. So that'll actually be a big part of our next pod, which is a good segue into our Q&A portion of the pod. So we do take questions for our panel on our different topics. So one of our upcoming topics, I can't speak today. One of our upcoming topics will be surrounding gaming. Another one of our topics that's on the horizon is looking at stress and burnout within the helping professions, and just sort of that overwhelming impact of our really tired helpers within the world at large. And then we've got a couple other pods on the way. I'd like to do a family systems related pod, so that one's still percolating, but we'll get there eventually. But our only question for today, and if you have a question for the pod, you can go ahead and email it to me at kim@howtobehappyhour.com. I believe that's right. If not, it's on our website. But the question today is, what TV or movie has had the biggest impact on how relationships are perceived? Or what TV or movie should we use to strive towards?
I grew up in Jersey Shore era.
Gym tan laundry.
So toxic, but the Sammy and Ronnie relationship, just, I don't know, that's the first thing that I'm like, I grew up thinking that was okay. And I personally was in an abusive relationship, and it was mutual. I don't know, I call it mutually abusive. We were both hurting each other, and I was super young, but I grew up in that era where it brought the reconnection after a fight was what I fought for. And so toxic even thinking about it, but I'm so glad I'm healed from that. But just like, I would literally fight and do these things because I was like, oh, the part afterwards, making up is the best part. Like, and you would live for the makeup part of the relationship.
What a roller coaster.
But I grew up with those kinds of messages being sent to me, and I binged out more when I was younger because I was denied as a kid to look into that. So then once I got freedom, in a sense, like in college, and I could actually watch these shows, I'm like, oh, this is how people are. Oh my gosh. Like, so I really fell into those traps before I became a therapist, and I was like, holy smokes. Like, there's so many things. But I grew up with Jersey Shore at the forefront, and just seeing all of those kinds of relationships, and bad example. You were talking about good examples, but I'm just saying.
No,
That's
I
a
think
good one too.
I'm
yeah.
curious about what's influenced.
That influenced me fully, and other shows too. I can't even think, but that was like the one that came to right at the front of my brain, and actually, I think led me to like a pretty abusive relationship, and thinking it was okay, and to live for the makeup part of it. Yeah. That's why I was asking if I could share personal stuff.
Yeah.
Because I was like, I feel okay sharing that. It's been so long ago, but yeah, that's where it led me.
My personal example, since I'll start with that. Was definitely Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Totally right. And I want just the Buffy Angel stuff and everything. And
I was always Team Spike.
And then he had to go.
I
It's
love
fine.
James Martin.
It's fine. We're fine.
I'm sorry.
It's fine. It's fine. Angel forever. Anyway, no, Spike's okay. He grew on me, but anyway. But that definitely had, like, as far as, like, what that's supposed to be or what that's supposed to look, things like that. And I also grew up watching anime as well. I still watch it. And so I gravitate toward those romance ones where it's totally a female fantasy, where it's this one girl and she's pretty normal and she's surrounded by these beautiful, beautiful men who are all in love with her because she's just so normal and everything like that. And again, as I loved all that. Ironically enough, I hated on Twilight, even though it was kind of the same thing. Bella was this normal, bland gal. To be honest, I never read the books, but but it was very easy for me to hit on Twilight. Which, looking back on it, I think it didn't deserve all the hate. It's a fantasy. Like, it's not healthy. It's not great. Watching person sleep without their consent, not great. Etc. 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 Don't do it. But regardless, I think that just kind of. Just when it comes to my own stuff, definitely more that, Buffy was big. But back to Twilight, and by extension, 50 Shades of Grey, that's what I would pick as far as having the biggest impact on what a relationship should be from a woman's sort of perspective. So this idea about I can be myself and I can be bland and I can be not the prettiest gal, but I get to fall in love with this guy who, also is like, oh, I love you, but but especially like, oh, but I'm a vampire, so no, I won't get into my deeper,
trope.
darker, things. And so I think that's just, such a fantasy to have this guy who's like so madly in love with you, and especially for younger girls who maybe are nervous about sex, it's like, no, I won't give into it. It's like so safe as well. But so unrealistic. And then 50 Shades of Grey, we don't have enough time for me to go into how bad that is, how poorly it represented the BDSM community, how, like, just talking about consent and opens to, and the things that Christian Grey did that weren't great or consensual or anything or healthy or wrong or whatever. And it was all romantic. Oh, it's so romantic. He spanks me because he loves me. Don't get me started. I will, yeah. But unfortunately, I think a lot of people thought this is what BDSM looks like. It's not. And it's just, that this is, again, this more idea about you're just supposed to give yourself over, do, this kind of stuff. I could keep going. I'll stop.
So I'll kind of like give a two-tiered answer, because I think like the first thing that came to my mind as we started talking about this idea was that this will probably be difficult forever, right? Because even as we're talking about like the fairy tales at the very beginning of this, I think there's innately in like humans been this fantasy of wanting everything to go very correctly, right? Because again, it's like a fantasy, and so people write stories likely based on this, and then people are drawn to reading that, because they probably relate to some part of the fantasy of everything going well, taking these huge risks, buying your significant other a house and having it just go so swell, right? Even though there's a weird clown picture on the wall. So I think it'll probably be something that humanity as a whole struggles with for a long time. And I don't have like a suggestion as to how that's fixed. But to answer the first part of the question, which was about, for us, the first thing that came to my mind when we're talking about like depictions of love and stuff is when I was a kid, the movie The Mummy came out.
Oh, yeah.
With Brendan Fraser, yeah. And I think that relationship to me, right, I think I was very drawn to the character Rick, I think it is, that Brendan Fraser plays, because, he's this manly man who goes on this adventure and he fights things and he's heroic. And the relationship he's in with Evelyn, I can't remember the actor that plays her, but right, she's smart and she also sword fights and stuff like that, and she's
Eden
someone.
just wants to find a nice sword fighting gal to settle down with.
That's so
and-
hard to ask.
Right, I know it is. So, but no, I think that depictions like that were initially when I was growing up. I think that was a big part of just the culture in general. There was a lot of that. So, I think that's what comes to mind first.
I think it depends what kind of relationship you need. I mean, like, we've been friends for 25 years, 20, a lot. And I don't think we could be more different when it comes to relationships. So I think while I do believe there are things that are inherently toxic across the board for everyone, what, like, you might see as a relationship that would be healthy and good for you, I might not. So I think a lot of it too depends on what you need in a relationship.
A sword fighting woman.
A sword fighting woman.
Jackson Teller, all day. Motorcycle gang, Jackson Teller.
So motorcycle gangs, sword fights,
Angel.
angel,
I'm The Rock.
vampires,
Yeah,
the
Rock.
Rock.
There you go.
There we
Yes.
are.
You should meet Silas.
No, well, I guess it's funny when this question, I made it about me, right? As all good narcissists do. And for me, the TV or movie that impacted my own perception of relationships, and it was hard for me to land on this, so I came up with two. One was growing up, I watched a lot of Nick at Night. And it was Lucy and Ricky Ricardo.
Oh, I love that.
And Lucy and if my husband ever yelled at me the way Ricky yells at Lucy, Lord help him. Lord, he better sleep with one eye open that evening. And so, like, that was one portrayal of a relationship that I remember, like, once upon a time, I wanted the Ricky to my Lucy. You know, the red hair. I mean, we're so similar. And yet, there were a lot of aspects of that relationship and watching it back in adulthood because I'm like with my kids now and I'm like, let's watch this together. And then it's like, ooh
Yeah, that's not great.
ooh,
Uh-huh.
Don't, or like Clueless, like, oh, that didn't age well.
Right.
But the other one that I think was the most influential for me was Saved by the Bell. And Kelly Kapowski and Zach Morris. And then, of course, there was also A.C. Slater.
Was A.C.
And
Slater.
Yes.
there was a lot of, like,
gosh.
drama and subterfuge and trying to make each other jealous.
Some triangulation.
A lot of triangulation. A lot of,
didn't
like,
think
pretty
of that.
unhealthy themes when you totally boil it down. And yet that was, like, the high school sweetheart, like, dream relationship.
Normal.
And that's normal. And I think to some degree it really is, right? Like, I think adolescents and they're figuring it out. They're they're bringing their family of origin trauma into that space and trying to sort it through and figure out if this is going to be part of their generation moving forward. Or are they going to say, like, stop, it ends there and I'm going to live differently moving forward? They're inherently hormonal and emotional and have some not fully developed, impulsive, lots of different things going on there. So I think there's some normalcy to the depiction, but it's still took what was pretty toxic when you look at the dynamics between them and they're like, look how beautiful it is. And like, even in the college years, like they still end up together. And it's like, man, how many times are you going to try? They're your ex for a reason. And how many times have I been in like a therapy session with a client that's like, oh, well, you know, my ex called me and we're really going to try to make it work for the 27th time. And like therapist Kim is like, yeah, what are you seeking to obtain from this new connection? Or, yeah, what are the boundaries that you like?
Yeah, what's going to be different
Yeah,
this
what are the
time?
boundaries
What
you
might
hope
that
to
look
bring into
like?
that relationship? But
Sure.
we never finally get there. So
You're making me think of like Boy Meets World now with
Topanga.
Topanga. But I thought, and now that I'm thinking, I thought it was so cute and healthy
sweet.
growing up. Now I want to like kind of go back and watch.
watch it back.
Yeah, and see was there toxicity in, because I can't think of anything toxic when it comes to my mind. No, but they were so cute growing up. But that was one of the relationships I saw too growing up on TV.
To idealize. So that brings us to last call. And the last call segment is specifically for us to look at a common popular phenomenon that needs to see itself out. It doesn't have to go home, but it can't stay here. And specifically for this topic, I wanted to introduce the notion of ghosting within a romantic setting. Ghosting is new since I was on the dating scene. So I've been married for 10 years. I was with my husband for about 3 before we got married. And ghosting wasn't that big of a phenomenon. But I know now it is much more common and much more regular in how relationships end. And what I'm noticing is from the employer aspect of things, we're seeing ghosting like make its way into more professional practices. So we'll hire somebody and give them an orientation date and they just don't show up and we never hear from them again. And it's like, man, we did a lot of work to prepare for your arrival. Like, and you ghosted us. A text message that says like, hey, not interested. Like that would have been good enough, but we don't get that anymore. And I'm wondering if maybe this phenomenon of ghosting is getting in our way of having like healthy conflict, essentially getting in the way and giving us some practice with saying like, hey, this doesn't work for me, so I'm going to go a different direction. And now we can't do it romantically, but it's bleeding out into other aspects of our lives where we also don't have those healthy feedback-oriented discussions in which we say, like, you don't work for me, and that's okay.
On a personal level, well, full disclosure, I used to be a ghoster.
Tiffany!
But I didn't know what it was called at the time, okay?
Oh, so
I've
you
been
were
with
a
my hubby
ghoster before ghosting was
it really
a thing.
but it all goes back to it's the conflict resolution thing for me. I was not developed fully in conflict resolution, and my way to avoid even before my husband, I was a long-term like gal. Like I wasn't just gonna date just to go on a date once. So I wouldn't ghost on the first date, but I would go on a date and then immediately I could feel it out within 10 minutes. I'm like, is this someone I'm gonna date? Like, because I would date to marry. That was my whole thing. That's how I got raised. So I was like, no. So then at this point, I'm here for dinner. I'm here for some drinks. And after that, peace. Like I cringe on it now because I'm like, could I have just sent a message and just said to the to the guy, just wasn't feeling it. No. And then they would ask, then you want to go date again? And I'm like, yeah, sure. Totally so disgusting. And so if any of them are watching, that's going to be embarrassing. But
you can apologize.
Actually, I fully apologize. I am a changed woman. I can definitely resolve conflicts now. But really, it's because I'm a therapist. Like in the last 10 years of being a therapist, my life has fully revamped, and we go back to the toxic. I don't have toxicity as much in my life, but I was a ghoster, but I think it all goes back to I just didn't have the balls or the nerve, like to just look in someone's face and be like, it's just not working out. Like no one ever rejected me, but I was worried about how I would come off to reject you. And I really struggled with that. So that was my thing. And then I think I said before this podcast too, I work on training new employees now. I'm in that realm in HQ, and the amount of times that I do a 6-hour training on the EMR system for family-based. So the amount of times, and thankfully it happens on a Tuesday, but on a Monday, I'm already have my schedule for the week, actually even the week before, and then I get a message on Monday saying, oh, the person you were supposed to have trained, or the 2 people, last time it was 3, all 3 of them, they just didn't show up. I'm like, is there a reason? They just didn't show up. There was nothing. And I'm like, I scheduled my entire Tuesday around this. Like, now I got to find 3 clients and I have to go see to fill up this 6-hour gap. And I'm just, to me, I'm like, not even me personally, like it didn't hurt my feelings. It's so rude. Like I'm just thinking, I know I give a lot to people being adults, like we're all professionals here, or you're about to be a professional in the field. Like, this isn't the way to do it. This isn't it. If you found a better job, just say it, or whatever it is. I don't know,
see it both ways. Like, I also will give, like, at times I've given our HR department feedback saying, like, and we don't ghost applicants. Like, every single applicant gets a letter that we're not interested.
So
we have to make sure we send that feedback saying, like, even though, like, legally we can't give a ton of feedback as to why we're going a different direction, at least we're going to close the loop, and you should know that we're not going to be following up with you for this. And to me, that's just the right way to end things.
Absolutely.
But I'm also like, you mentioned being conflict avoidant. I grew up in a family that was like, conflict! Like, so whatever it was, you move towards it every time. And so I probably have exes in my history that are like, Kim was such a dick. Because I didn't ghost you. I was just like, yeah, I'm not into you. I'm really sorry. Like,
And I was afraid of coming off hard like that. I was afraid at the time, you know.
I would come off
now,
pretty hard, I think.
no,
Maybe
now
ghosting
that's
would have
what
been
it is.
nicer. There's like guys, Kim, why did you ghost? I don't know, but here we are.
No, I disagree with that. The ghosting is not something I am excited about that our culture has moved in that direction. I think for everything, and you're right as far as moving into professional. I've talked with my teenage clients, and they talk about their friends ghosting them. Not like they're still friends, like it's still like, you know, but it's just they'll text 5 days later after the event and then be like, hey. Like nothing happened, like nothing, they completely didn't ghost them, they completely didn't. And then of course, similarly, I meet with the ghosters who say very similar confessions to yours, who is like, all right, so I just didn't text back. And this is who I'll just be like, you what? And I'll be like, yeah, I didn't text them back. And I'll be like, okay, fair enough, you know, kind of thing. So no, but I've definitely noticed this more. I'm not a fan of it.
Yeah, kind of similarly in my own practice. I apologize.
No, go ahead.
You're going to be pro ghosting, aren't you?
I have a reason. I'll play devil's advocate.
well,
but go
let's
ahead.
cool.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, in my own experience working with people who have been the victims of ghosts, and usually like the analogy I'll use is the movie The Blair Witch Project. The scariest part of it is you don't know what the monster looks like, right? As soon as you see it, you can begin to fathom how to defeat it or escape it or whatever, right? But and so I think that's the problem a lot of times with ghosting is for people is that they'll interpret their worst fear from, you know, the ghosting, why I've been ghosted. Oh, it's because I thought I was ugly before and this confirms it, right? And I think so while it's very difficult to sometimes come up to someone and have that conversation with them about why you may not want to continue pursuing them, etc., it's often more beneficial for them than just leaving them loose and hanging where they can interpret anything that they want
So
to.
true.
Yeah. So, but to kind of play devil's advocate on my own, I've also heard the justification that, you know, it will hurt them worse, right?
But it
For me to go to them and directly reject them, right? This way the door is always open. Right?
So what you got for us?
So I'm sitting here listening to everybody, and I don't inherently necessarily disagree with all of it, but I think you guys are all coming at it from like a, we just don't get along, I don't want to spend my life with you, where if somebody does something really fucked up to you, I don't think they deserve an
That
explanation
makes
all
sense.
the time.
I agree.
And I don't think it's it's not your responsibility to tell them what a shitty person they are.
I agree.
Figure it out yourself. Or jump to the worst case conclusion because it's probably true.
That I agree with.
I knew I was ugly. Oh my gosh.
No, you have great hair. But in terms of like you talking about your teenage clients and stuff, I think that is an expectation that's been put on not just teens, but everybody, where you have your phone and your watch all the time, that you are always accessible and you always have this responsibility and obligation to respond. And I don't think you do.
I agree
Like,
with
if
you.
I don't want to respond to you, I'm not going to.
To me, that's not ghosting, though.
But you said they come back like a couple days later.
Yeah, so it's like they call. Sorry, let me explain. So like,
Sorry,
hey,
maybe I missed it.
no, let's make plans. Absolutely, let's make plans. Awesome, great. So we've got plans to do something on Saturday. Perfect. I'll give you a text when I wake up in the morning, and we'll go from there. Awesome. Saturday morning comes. My client's waiting for the text, and the text never comes. And then Sunday comes, and the text never comes. And eventually, my client will be like, "Hey, you okay?" Nothing. Nothing. Monday comes. Nothing. Tuesday comes. Nothing. It's finally Wednesday. And they get a text, "Hey!" And my client's like, "Hi?" And it's like, "Do you want to hang out?" No mentioning, no nothing. To me, that's ghosting.
So ghosting can be used to explain like short-term stand-ups, right? Standing someone up, but also the end of a relationship, I think is what we're saying.
Now, in the professional
Yeah.
setting, I don't know, man up and quit a
Just
job
be a
or don't show up. Or
friend.
like, I don't, once you're in a professional relationship with an employer or a client or something, like, I don't think
That's
you
your
have to do it.
responsibility.
Right,
to do
yeah,
the
as
right
an adult,
thing.
like, that is just how you quit a job or you don't accept a job. But in terms of personal relationships, whether that's a romantic relationship or a friendship or even with family, I don't necessarily think that you owe anyone something just to be the better person. Like if you're good with it and you need to look out for you because something happened, then don't ever call them back. I don't know.
And see, that's what I do agree with you on that part. But I think for me, who grew up like where kids should be seen, not heard as much, I take that like a little tiff, and I kind of want to grow up with that. And now I'm like, if you are a shitty person, I want you to know now. And then it brings me back, like, I want my voice to be heard, and ghosting takes that opportunity out of it. Like, if I don't sit there and then tell you how shitty you were, I just don't, then I feel like for me, I feel like it would be like a cliffhanger on my own end. Like, dang, that person needs to, like, for me, that person needs to know they were shitty, and this is why you're not going to make it in life. Like, you know, on an extreme level. But that's, you know, it gives me my voice and my power back, because I do think about all those other things. And I don't think it's my job or my responsibility to have helped those people in the past know why it never worked out with me. But then I also, I don't know, could it have been helpful? Maybe, but I feel bad for some of those people. And you're right, if none of them did something terribly wrong.
Yeah,
so
no,
that also is where I'm coming from too, but I feel like I owed them that for that time being, like, you know, you need to work on your hygiene, dude, because you stunk. Like, and that could have helped them in the future, you know.
See, and I think that dovetails really nicely though, because it's exactly what you're saying. It's, you don't owe that person anything. You have the choice, and you're saying like you would take that opportunity, you would choose to let that person know. Perfect. Yeah.
So it sounds to me like this mixture of both. Sometimes I think there are moments in which you shouldn't ghost employers. You shouldn't ghost, you know, the person that you went out on a date with, and they do deserve to hear why you're not going on a second one. But there are also moments where people who get ghosted should not jump to the worst case scenario, and maybe should do a little bit better self-reflection.
No, I think if we reserved ghosting for those instances, like the instances in which somebody clearly crosses a line, then I think it's more impactful. But when we use it for anything, like you ordered like a rum and coke, and I'm a gin girl, so I'm not here for, you know what I mean? Like, maybe that's why. Yeah. And so, like, if that's the reason, then maybe say that would be more effective versus, but if you really cross a line, then no, you don't owe them anything. Even in those instances, and what I'm thinking, so I've never ghosted anyone in a dating relationship. I haven't dated enough in, like, the times where it's common for that to be a thing, but I've had former employees, I can think of one in particular that knew you as well, who following her employment would just send me like these hateful messages and from Chambersburg actually. Hateful messages, and she really didn't like this one either. So just these horrible things. And even in that moment, I felt the responsibility to say, just so you know, I'm not going to answer you anymore. Like, this is my boundary. You're being abusive.
I'm communicating.
We're done.
Right.
I'm done. Exactly. But even in that moment, like, I don't know maybe it's my guilt. I don't know what it is, but I had to, like, set the boundary and say, we're done. And then I was able to stick with it. But otherwise, I just feel like it stays open in my head. So for me, I want to close the door so that I can move on and just say every time I get a text message from that particular person, which hasn't happened in a while, but now that
But went on for a very long time.
But it did go on for a very long time.
Wow.
I just deleted it after that. Like, I wouldn't even read it. I would just delete. But you don't, you know, I don't know. I feel like that's a very specific context.
Right.
Oh, so that brings us to the end of our time here today. Thank you all so much for leaning in and talking about the way in which romance isn't always perfect in the media and how that might impact us. We have 2 upcoming pods that are currently planned. So one on the psychology of gaming, the other will be on stress and burnout within the helping professions. So as usual, always eliciting questions for that. And otherwise, thank you all so much. And I look forward to hearing from you. Bye.
Thank you.